what are the basics, the very basics of voting in Victoria? So I'm going to play a video for you right now.
Voting is simpler than you'd think. When you vote in a state election, you're voting for who you want to represent you in the two houses of the state parliament. There's the Legislative Assembly, known as the lower house. The party or parties that win the majority of seats in the lower house forms a government. And the Legislative Council, known as the upper house. The lower house ballot paper is the smaller of the two ballots issued to you. To vote, put the number 1 in the box next to the candidate you most want to see elected. Then number all the other boxes in order of your choice. Number every box and only use each number once. The upper house ballot paper is the larger of the two ballots, and there are two options for completing it, above or below the line. To vote above the line, put the number 1 next to your preferred group of candidates in one of the boxes above the black line. This means that your preferences will be determined by the group you vote for, in line with one of its group voting tickets, which you can check out on the VEC website before you vote. That's it for voting above the line. You leave the rest of the ballot unmarked. To vote below the line, you need to number at least 5 of the candidate boxes below the black line in order of your preference. You can continue numbering if you wish, but you must choose at least 5 candidates.
So that's pretty simple, right? Victoria has 88 districts, which is the lower house, and 8 regions, which is the upper house or the Legislative Council. So there is 1 candidate per district that gets elected, and there is 5 per region that get elected. And the premier is determined by which party gets the most seats within the 88 districts. If you learn how to vote properly in the federal election, that's great. For the lower house, which is the green paper, and the 88 districts, whatever you learnt does apply. It's the same. You still need to number every single box. There is something I really do need to address before I move on. Remember, the federal election campaign put the majors last. That does not work in the Victorian lower house, okay? You have to number every box, but if you put the majors last, then you'll be putting parties like the Victorian Socialist Party in front of the Liberal Party. And look, we all have our opinions about the Liberal Party, but I would rather put them before the Victorian Socialist Party, for example. So put majors last concept. Please put that out of your mind for now. We really need to look at each individual district and region to actually come up with the right way to vote. Keep in mind, we are going to give you everything you need. So don't be overwhelmed. Don't worry, we've got you. And there's a lot of people working on this. So just stay tuned. Everything will be fine. So now let's talk about the upper house ballot. Now, this is the really big white one. You would have remembered filling it in for the federal election. It's going to look more or less similar with slightly different instructions. You also need to forget what you learned in the federal election when it comes to the big white ballot paper. Let's talk about above the line first. In the short video I just played for you, you would have heard the lady talking about group voting tickets and that you only need to number 1 box above the line. Now, that is indeed how it is done, which is very different to the federal election. So listen up for what I'm about to talk about. Your number 1 means a great deal. It always does, but in the Victorian state election, it means even more. If you put a 1 next to your favorite party above the line, you must know what their group voting ticket is, because your preferences will actually flow according to their group voting ticket. Don't worry, I'm going to explain. I will now read off the VEC website for more clarity. As said before, if you keep up to date with our communication, you won't miss a beat, I promise. So here goes. I'm going to read this stuff to you. Now, all groups must submit at least 1 group voting ticket. Group voting tickets for the 2022 state election must be submitted to our head office from 9 a.m. on Saturday, the 12th of November to 12 noon on Sunday, the 13th of November, just before pre-polling starts. Group voting tickets are used to determine how your group wants to direct preferences when someone votes above the line. You can read more about it here, and I'm going to go to that link in a second. All group voting tickets will be published on our website from Sunday, the 13th of November. Voters will also be able to inspect group voting tickets at early voting centres and on election day. So don't be stressed out because these group voting tickets will be shown to you. Don't worry. I'll go into a little bit more detail after I finish reading the next slide. Above the line. Now, keep in mind, this is all about the big white piece of paper. Above the line. The boxes above the line are groups of candidates that have registered one or more group voting tickets. So that is obviously a party, or if two independents have formed a group. But in this case, mostly parties is what a group of candidates means, actually. To vote above the line, write the number 1 in the box for the group you want to support. Seems pretty obvious. When you vote above the line, your preferences will be decided by the group voting ticket. A group voting ticket is a statement on how each party or group gives preferences to candidates. Every registered group voting ticket is made available on the website before an election and is also on display at major voting centres. So the moral of this story is, folks, that if you want to vote above the line and just put a number 1 next to your favorite party, which is of course easier in a way, you really need to know what the group voting ticket is, because if they do not get in, your vote will then flow however they have decided. So I think you understand, it's really important. And don't worry, we will publish all the group voting tickets as soon as they are available. And I'm sure that some parties will actually be publishing the group voting tickets before the deadline anyway, which will be great. So now let's move on to below the line. Some people will not want to trust the group voting ticket structure and would prefer to vote below the line. So below the line in a state election, the boxes below the line represent each candidate. To vote below the line, write a number 1 in the box of the most preferred candidates. Continue to number at least 5 boxes on the ballot paper in the order you prefer. If you choose to vote below the line, you have control over your preferences. So they say it very clearly there. Above the line, you don't have control of your preferences. Below the line, you do. So it's really up to you which way you want to do it. But if, like I said, if you fully trust a party's preference flow, then you can vote 1 above the line as well. So in short, the green paper is the same as the federal election. Nothing new to see here, except we're not going to put the majors last as a broad concept anymore, are we? Once all the candidates are announced and registered, we will provide you with all the information you need, I promise. And people like Joel Jamal from Turning Point Australia is doing a lot of work for the Victorian election, thank goodness. He's producing how to vote cards, and we'll make sure that you have access to all of them as well. In regards to the big white ballot paper, we obviously don't know each party's group voting ticket yet. So it would be way too hasty to make a decision on someone that we want to vote 1 for above the line, unless you already know where they're voting, but it's not public knowledge anyway, as far as I'm aware. So until we know more, my personal strategy is going to be this. I will definitely be voting under the line, and I will number the candidates from the Freedom parties first. So for example, if my favorite Freedom Party has 3 candidates below the line, I'll go 1, 2, 3. My second favorite Freedom Party, 4, 5, 6. And my third favorite, 7, 8, 9, you get the picture. But something I am going to advocate for a little bit differently this time is, let's say my last numbers happened, let's say all the candidates for the Freedom Party, let's say there's 20 of them. So I've numbered 1 to 20, all the candidates from the Freedom Party. I'm going to put, let's say there's 3 Liberal candidates, I'm going to put them as 21, 22 and 23. Now, it's not because I'm necessarily voting for the Liberal Party. I think we can all agree that they have been pretty spineless, most of them. But I don't want my vote to be wasted. I don't want it to go into the bin. And I don't want mine to go into the bin and then be counteracted by a vote for Labor or Greens. So that's just what I'm doing.